Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have author, speaker, and coach Adam Jablin with us. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time after months of trying to get this thing scheduled. We finally got it done. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Tony. I'm grateful to be with you, and I'm grateful that we just opened with that prayer one on one before we hopped on. So I'm feeling ready to go.
Well, one of the things that I like to do before we get into the weeds of your story is kind of look at a macro perspective. You've done a lot of things. You've got a journey that we're going to jump into various parts. But I love to hear your answer to this question. How would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
Mm. Well, the calling is definitely my passion. It's my driving force. It's what allows me to connect with others. How would I describe that? I'd have to say, Tony, that it's that calling that I have is my duty. It's my duty. You
Hmm.
know, he could have taken me many, many times, and probably we'll get into that within the story. But, he kept me here for a reason. I'm severely overpaid. I shouldn't be on the earth anymore. So it's my duty. I think I'm here to try to fulfill this mission.
And if someone had never met you before, and they see you, one of the things that they're immediately going to notice is you have this immense sense of gratitude about where life has you and your mission to walk alongside other leaders and that whole process. How do you continually mind gratitude as a personal discipline in your daily walk?
Wow. It's truly, brother, it's a constant reminder.
Mm,
I'm as human as the next person, and my brain will sometimes want to focus on problems or issues or the how am I going to do this, how is this going to get done, when is this going to get accomplished. So what it is a constant reminder to be where my feet are, to truly remember that I'm healthy, my children are healthy, the people I love are healthy, my girl is healthy. What's really important, that bank accounts go up and down, popularity goes up and down. Like my mentor always taught me, there's the wheel that everybody's on. You got the number one record, you got the number one this, and a few weeks later you're number three, and then a few months later you're at 8, and then before you know it, you're out of everyone's eyesight, and now everyone wants to come back. So you start making a new album or whatever it is, a new podcast, and then you're on top again, and you just go on this wheel. And the idea is, like the prayer we had before, is to be in the center of the wheel, to be so
mm.
God centered that you don't constantly go on. And so my job of gratitude is to get off that wheel and to stay in the center. And when I'm there, I'm an extremely grateful man. And when I'm somewhere on this wheel, that's where the ego comes out.
Now, I know that there's a lot of leaders listening who just feel like you completely stepped on their toes. And that's good. That's what we're here for. And so, how do we get off of the outside of the wheel and get to the center? What are some of the practices that you commit yourself to? One of the things that we say around here a lot is that if you aren't dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions. What are some of your daily have tos?
So, okay, every day I must pray.
Hmm.
Every day I must meditate. Every day I must tell 3 people that I love them and let them know how important they are to me. Every day I must focus, not necessarily act, but focus my mindset on what my goals and my visions are.
Hmm.
And every day I must help another soul.
Wow.
So for me, when my driving question somewhere in my brain, when my primary question somewhere deep down, when you really got to get to know Adam, was, how am I ever going to be as successful as my father? Like, if you strip me down, there was that question. what that question did was it made me compete with somebody I love very, very much. And it made my primary question in life about money.
Mm.
Right? How am I ever going to be as successful as this? How am I ever, right? So you could put in your own X and Z. I'm being very raw and real with your audience. I'm getting naked. When I was able to change that question to how many people can I help today? That is when all of the abundance started coming to me. Right? So so if you even strip down my first primary question, which was, how am I ever going to be as successful as my father? It was about finances, or let's just say wealth. It was comparing me to somebody that was my hero and my idol. And if you take it one step further, what it really was is, am I good enough to be loved, and will I be abandoned? Right?
Yeah.
Keep stripping that question down. You're like, why are you worried about that? Why are you worried about that? Why are you? Am I good enough? Am I good enough? Am I good enough to be loved? Will I be loved? Are people going to leave me alone? Am I going to be alone? Right? When I say how many people can I help today, how many people can I serve today, it's not about me. It's not about money. It's about how many people can I help. And when I do that, as you and I were discussing before, they said, Rabbi, what are the top 2 commandments? Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your brother as yourself.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because there's that in that command, there's that not so obvious statement that you have to love yourself first in order to love other people.
I love it too.
And that's one of the things I see in the work that you do. And as we record this now in early October, I know that you just recently finished a neuro health summit, a project that you worked on. And I have the phrase in my notes, neuro hero wrote down.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that tool or set of tools that you're developing and that you took a whole bunch of leaders on. What was that like? What was that whole experience about?
So fulfilling, brother. Thank you for asking. Well, neuroscience is on everybody's radar now.
Yeah.
And I'm so blessed I was able to do this seminar, this one with Dr. Rob Kelly, who's one of the leading doctors in the field. And you could go to Dr. Joe Dispenza. Like, neuroscience and the way the brain works is on everybody's map, right? However, the science is also about building pathways, and what people are trying to do is get through their journey to be the person they always want to get to be wealthier, healthier, happier, more fulfilled. And what that truly is going through the hero's journey. So what we did was we took the neuroscience of building new pathways in the brain, right? And how to do it, right? Dr. Rob was teaching how to do it and teaching the actual hero's journey, right? And my hero projects journey, where I take my client, what I actually take all of my clients through, and combining them so you can see how the science backed the work. And I'm so grateful to say, Tony, it was a success. Having an event and knowing your material, that I love. Hosting an event and what the business behind an event, that's a whole other animal. You know what I mean? And there's a reason that I am not an event planner. So my goal is to grow these to the point that I have people that help me run the event, or I'm not the one coordinating the meals, the tickets, the T-shirts, the notebooks, the pens. I have a team that does all of that, but I'm learning and growing. So I had to be the event host, and I also had to be the event planner, and that was a little tricky, but it was a huge success. So I'm blessed that you asked that question.
Well, what's crazy is as I got into the weeds of your story, this idea of being a neuro hero is so far removed from where you were in 2006, when your family kind of surrounded you in this moment of intervention. I'm wondering if you might share a little bit about the journey that led you to a place that said you needed help and you had to go somewhere to get it.
Yeah. Thank you for asking, brother. Let's just focus on that one part. I was third generation in the biggest lace empire, my family business. We were the biggest lace empire in the world. I'm very proud, right? And I was the third Jablin to go in. And I had these heroes, my father and my grandfather. And one was a captain of industry. My grandfather was, I would say, the Joe Montana, right, of manufacturing lace. And then my dad came in and he was Tom Brady.
Mm.
And I was like, oh man, like, how do I live up to this? And I worked really hard, but I drank like a fish. And, I'm an alcoholic and an addict. So, I would feel a symptom just to be able to take the pill. I had Oxycontin and Darvocet and Percocet for my hurt knee and my hurt shoulder. I had Ambien to sleep. I had Xanax to calm down. I had uppers, laughers, downers, screamers, you name it. I was a walking pharmacy. And finally, at that point where you're talking about, I actually couldn't control my body anymore. And that was weird. You know what I mean? Because I was all about my body and my charisma, and I couldn't control. Like, I was taking all that stuff to relax the brain, but not that I wanted to lose my body, to actually control my body. You know what I mean? And I remember being with my wife and drinking, and all of a sudden, like I had so many pharmaceuticals in me. The wine would mix with the Xanax and the Ambien from the night before, and my eyes would be rolling in my head, and I'd be slurring. I couldn't control the body anymore. And I made a fool of myself and got into fights and arguments. Nothing physical, but I just got really, really dark, Tony. Really, really dark. And I was like, what is this all about? Like, what is life all about? I felt like everything was a sham. I mean, is this what life's about? Business and living up to these heroes and putting more money in the bank and getting more cars and politics. I don't believe any of these people, and the NBA is fixed and the NFL is fixed. Just everything was just dark.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, I walked into an intervention because of so many consequences that I had piled up. Everyone was able to get together and be like, Adam has a problem. And dude, I remember like yesterday, like I went as a people pleaser. Like I remember hearing in my head and saying it out loud, like in the movie Goodfellas, when Ray Liotta goes like, okay, take me to jail. Like that's what I said. I was like, all right, take me to jail. Like I saw rehab as jail. What I didn't know, what it was going to be the biggest gift in my life. It was going to be the biggest present I was ever given. And it allowed me to understand the disease of alcoholism and addiction. That it is a disease, by the way. It takes four components to be a disease. You have to be progressive, worse over time. You have to be chronic, always there. You have to be primary, not secondary. And you have to be fatal. It kills you. If you take one of those away, you have a disorder. And disorders are bad enough, right?
Yeah.
But if you have all four qualifications, you have a medical disease. So I had to learn that I was sick and not a bad person. And then I had to learn about spirituality. And I remember, Tony, I remember a poster saying, make the appropriate face with the appropriate emotion, right? So there was a smiley face and a sad face, and it showed everything, confused, anger. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was always smiling, even when I wanted to kill you. Like I smiled. I was such a phony. Right? And everyone in there was a phony. They were just wearing a certain mask. They would always show upset, but sometimes they were happy because that was their way of getting what they needed. There was everybody, so all the people in there were phonies with me, but mine was this big bullshit, charismatic, winking at you, pointing. But I was dying inside. I wasn't that happy. I wasn't that charismatic. I was putting on a front so I can get what I want. And so this place slowly started putting me together. I had a profound spiritual experience in this treatment center. I was truly introduced to God in a way that I never had before.
And that was by Father Ron, is that right?
Yeah.
Now, Father Ron, this is interesting, right? Because you're a Messianic Jew, and Father Ron is a Catholic priest.
Yeah.
What was that relationship like in rehab?
It was amazing. I mean, looking back, I look at what a trip, but it was, the truth of it was, I didn't know about spirituality and religion.
Yeah.
Like really understand it. law of attraction and woo, and maybe wear a bracelet and open the door for an old lady and think you have good karma, and but I didn't really understand what the principles and the values of God were. Or the virtues, even the virtue, and I'm sitting there with a Catholic priest. This is like day 3 or 4 into rehab, and he asks me if I believe in God. And quick answer for everybody: if you're ever sitting in an office of a Catholic priest and they ask you if you believe in God, say yes. Right? So
No,
yeah,
I'm gonna put that in the notes. Yeah.
yeah, I give him some woo woo, ridiculous answer, and I heard Tony. He goes, all right, take it easy," and I heard that a lot. So I guess one of the things I didn't realize was how like wound up I was, because I heard that a lot.
Mm,
Take it easy. And he asks me to put my arm out. So I put my arm out, and he goes like this, right? So this is his hand, and he goes like this. And he goes, "Do you see what I did there?" And I'm looking at my arm, and I'm looking at the Father, and I'm looking at my arm, I'm like, "Father, I'm sorry, I don't see anything." So he does it again, very gently. He goes, "Do you see what I did there?" So I'm looking at my arm, I'm looking at my father. I'm like, Father, I'm Jewish. Maybe there's a disconnect here. He starts laughing. He does it again. He's like, "You see what I did this time?" Now I'm like feeling really uncomfortable. So I start using humor because I'm like, this is strange, right? So I'm like, "Father, I heard about you guys and little boys." You know what I mean? He starts laughing. He turns the lights off and he puts a light on, right? A UV light on. And there are all his fingerprints, purple fingerprints glowing,
wow.
right? And he goes, "Adam, do you believe that there's been a power all around you that you can't see, taste, touch, none of the 5 basic senses, that has been guiding you, protecting you, and brought you here to this moment with me?" And I'm looking at these fingerprints glowing in the air. And I'm like, "Father, I can believe." And he turned the lights back on. And Tony, I was like, "Whoa, like do it again." Like I thought it was like a magic trick. I'm like, do it again, do it again. But what happened was this Catholic priest took this Jew from Jersey and like downloaded him into the matrix. He
Mm,
allowed me to have, for the first time, my own understanding and concept of a power greater than myself. We didn't get into the 5 books of the Torah. We didn't get into Jesus's teachings. We didn't get into the Apostle Paul. We didn't get into Genesis. We didn't get into Revelations. We got into, can you believe?
yeah.
That's simple. And that day changed my whole life.
Now, how long were you in rehab for?
28 days.
28 days. And I'm going to ask you an impossible question. So just be ready. I think you're up for it. If you had to summarize what you learned about God in those 28 days in one sentence, what would it be?
God is real.
Hmm. Now,
So
yeah, keep
let's
going.
play with that sentence real fast, right, Tone?
Yeah,
God is real. And therefore now your faith in him is going to show that relationship. If you believe that's a loving God, because God is real, you will feel a loving God. If you think that is a vengeance God, God is real. You will find that revenge in your life. God is real. If you believe God doesn't care about you, you will feel like nothing cares about you in your life. But at the end of the day, God is real.
now you correct me if I'm wrong. You currently serve as the chair of the board for that very same rehab center, don't you?
Yes, I do. I don't talk about that a lot, by the way, but yes, I do.
So I'm interested in what is it like for you to go back into that space to walk alongside other men. I know that's a big part of your ministry, is helping people get sober, not just from alcoholism or addiction, but from a lot of different things in their life that have become unhealthy coping skills. What's it like for you now to walk back in as the chair of the board?
It's it's very emotional every time.
Yeah.
It's always it's always a good feeling to go back home and to allow people to see what you were able to do with what you were taught. No matter what stage of that cycle is in life. You know, if you grew up in Jersey and you go back and you visit people in Jersey, if you're at this church or this ministry and you leave for a while and you come back and you know, if you played for North Carolina and then you go play for the Bulls and now you're playing in Charlotte, it's good to show them where you know, what skills you were able to you know, acquire in this journey. So I go in very emotional. It always hits me very hard of this is where it all started. I can still feel all the same feelings. I can still recapture specific moments and specific faces from 17 years ago. But then when I go and I sit down, the other side of me comes out where it's time to be a professional and help people to the highest ability that I can. But for me, going on the property and seeing everyone for the first time always hits that part of my soul.
Now, I'm going to chase my curiosity a little bit here with your family business.
Yeah.
The best I can tell, you're not really involved in that on a daily basis anymore. What's your relationship like with the family business, and how did you deal with the idea of, or did you have to deal with the idea of possibly disappointing, you know, to use your words, Joe Montana and Tom Brady?
Yeah. So thank you for asking. I'm going to start with that part first, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
And then I'm going to answer what happened, which is nothing short of a miracle.
Love it.
What happened with me in this getting sober process and finding God and helping people was what I realized where my gifts were not only was I not Joe Montana or Tom Brady, I wasn't even a quarterback. Not only was I not even a quarterback, I wasn't even in the same sport. Okay. Where I was a coach, and what kind of coach I was like Phil Jackson from the Chicago Bulls, who's like a mentor, and the Lakers. He's been a guiding force in my life. He's somebody I look up. He's been nothing but gracious to me in my life.
Wow.
So what I found out was I wanted to be like these idols. And if you ask me who my favorite player of all time was, it was Michael Jordan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm not these people. I am not these killers. I am not these killer. What I am is somebody that knows how to lead from my heart in a spiritual way. I know how to get people together. I know how to get people harmonious. I know how to bring the best out in people. I know how to mentor them, meaning I know how to show them what I've done. I know how to coach them, meaning I know how to bring the best out within them, and I know how to teach them, meaning I know how to show them how to go to A to B, B to C, C to D. And those are three different skills: mentoring, coaching, and teaching. And when I realized who I am and what my abilities were, that was when I was able to take over the company. Because I'm not a quarterback. How can I lead like that if I don't have an arm? I don't know how, but I do know how to lead. Yeah. I just lead from a completely. So that was when I started to shine. When I started owning my own skills, all of a sudden, all the clients wanted to talk to Adam. All the customers wanted to talk to Adam. There's something about Adam. They're not calling Bob anymore. They're not calling my dad. They're not calling Morton anymore. My dad starts living in Aspen. He doesn't even want to be around because he's not the man anymore. My whole team is always coming to me. I lead from a very peaceful place, not from a very this kind of way. And we thrive. But the family business, we decided right before COVID, we got an offer that you just couldn't refuse.
Sure.
Right before COVID. And like I said, we were in intimate apparel, and there's a story behind that. But I do think it's worth sharing with people about having a vision and understanding the future. My customers were some of the biggest names out there, or are the biggest names out there in my, right? So Victoria's Secrets, La Perla, Hanky Panky, Hanes brand, you name it. Like, I'm dealing with the biggest of the big, multi-millionaires and a couple of billionaires.
Yeah.
And just to understand why I'm bringing this up, they did not believe in the power of Amazon. Oh, kid, you don't know what you're talking about. A woman is always want to go to a store and try a bra on and a panty on, and brick and mortar isn't going anywhere, and you people are crazy. And okay. I'm letting you know right now, my wife orders 3 pairs of shoes and 2 bras and sends back what she doesn't want, but okay. And they did. You can look at their stock prices now just so you can see how much they
Right.
didn't believe. Okay. And at that time, the Me Too movement was very big. Not saying right or wrong. What it did do for, like, of course, you want women to have rights and for their voice to be heard. But what it did to high-end fashion was it killed it, because now we're like, we don't want to be seen as sex models and da, da, da. So the style, if you look at fashion, got very clunky looking. So we were up against forces of nature, and at the same time, we had no idea what we were sitting on real estate wise and how much our machines were worth overseas. And we got the call. And by the way, we're focused, right? So imagine, where, what does Tony say? Where attention goes, energy flows, right?
Yeah.
So we're focused on business. I'm not focused on how much the real estate is. I'm not focused on what China's worth buying the machine. I'm focused on how do I keep this empire alive in the United States of America. You know what I mean? And we get the call, and the number was ridiculous. And before we knew it, it was time to prepare an exit strategy. I got every single one of our employees a job,
Wow.
every single one. And there was a time where my dad's finally like putting the cowboy hat up, and he's like, I'm not a businessman anymore, and it was time for me to launch the Hero Project.
One of the things that I love to ask high capacity leaders is discernment when it comes to the voice of God. You're obviously a leader who is dependent upon your spiritual journey. You call yourself a spiritual trainer, which I love. How did you know that, besides obviously the number was what you wanted it to be, or, taking out all the business side of it, how did you get that sense of peace that God was giving you a nudge? Or how do you discern that now? How do you know it's God's voice and not just the burrito you had the night before?
It's great. Well, I believe it's a lot of prayer. It's a lot of contemplation. It's a lot of trust. It's a lot of sharing with the right person. I'm a really big believer in having an outside reference to your life.
Mm-hmm.
So sharing with somebody that you can trust, that will at least give you direction and guidance that's for your benefit. And divine timing is divine timing.
Yeah.
When there's 3 seconds on the clock, there's a moment that you can pass the ball. It better be the most perfect pass, because that's giving the person that's going to take the shot that many less seconds, or you have to make the shot. And making a decision is the hardest thing for us humans at certain times, just making a decision. But not making a decision is purgatory.
Right.
So you have to blend this human element and component with God's great plan and his divine power, and realize that you'll live to see another day.
The move from lace and intimate apparel to the Hero Project feels like a hard turn. I'd love to hear the genesis story on how it was born.
Yeah, well, there's a few components, 3 components. One was, at the time, I'm 15 years clean and sober, and I go to a 12-step community, and in that community, we have things called sponsors. These are men or women that will take you through the steps. And at this point, in my 15 years, not only am I sponsoring half of my town, I'm sponsoring very high-end celebrities, athletes, because they love me not only because of my charisma and how much I love recovery, but it's so funny how these people love fashion. Like, it's rock stars want to be in fashion. Fashion people want to be rock stars. These people want to be, everybody wants to do something that they're not doing. These people, actors want to be in bands. People, everyone wants. Right. So they love that I was like this fashion guy. It was very attractive to them. So I have all these years of recovery and giving back and doing everything I can to help another soul. And then I have a friend of mine that runs a very, very high end agency. I don't want to mention the name because it'll just be too apparent, especially if people go through my Instagram, and it'll just be too easy to break confidentiality
Sure,
everywhere.
sure, sure.
So it's a very high end agency for athletes, celebrities, entertainers, and he's having a problem with one of his highest entertainers, and he asks me to help, and I'm like, dude, I don't do this professionally. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a 12-step guy. I help people. He's like, dude, we've gone through every doctor, every coach. I've known you for 17 years. I know exactly who you are. I saw the end. I saw you get clean and sober. I've seen who you are now. I need you to speak to her, please. And I'm like, dude, okay, okay. And we're at the Hard Rock, and we go to this room, and there she is, this enormous star. And I just say, can we have, who, by the way, celebrity leaves very quickly when there's tears coming out of their eyes, just so you know. And I said, we have a few minutes alone, and we were in that room for 3 hours.
Wow.
Right, 3 hours. And before you know it, she's like, I want to work with him, blah, blah, blah. I want him. I need him in my life. This is what I'm looking for. And I felt very naked because I don't have certificates. I don't have diplomas. I don't do this professionally.
Yeah.
But it was a moment. He grabbed me and he was like, dude, this is your calling.
Yeah.
Like, this is who you are. I know it. Everyone else can see it. You have to own it. That was a moment. I'm giving you a highlight reel because with every high, there's a little bit of love, just so you know.
Absolutely.
And so it's my 15 years at that time, clean and sober. It's that moment. And then when we decide to sell the business, I go to my mentor. He's a rock and roll Hall of Fame legend named Dion. They're making a Broadway play about his life called The Wanderer. He's known for the Runaround Sue, Wanderer. He's the only artist that has been relevant in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 20s, 2000s, 2010, 2020. He's only one over 7 decades. We're actually writing a book together, and where Springsteen's writing the foreword, Bob Dylan's writing for us, like legends for when my age, my kids don't know who these people are, but to have these people writing a book, it just, for me, it's so powerful. But I remember coming in and being like, what you just said with the original question, I said, like, what do I do now? Do you know what I mean? Like, I know how to make schmatas. I know how to make lace. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was like, and he looked at me like I had 3 heads. And this was my moment. He goes, what are you talking about? He's like, you're going to be Adam. You're going to influence people to live in a higher reality, to live in God's reality. You're going to influence thought. You're going to help people. And something between my recovery, that moment, working for those high-end celebrities, and my mentor giving me the permission slip to be myself gave birth to the Hero Project.
And if you were going to summarize the Hero Project for somebody who hadn't done the research that I have, or like, how would you what's the 30-second elevator pitch on what the Hero Project is?
Yeah. So I free people from alcoholism, addiction, unhealthy dependencies, whatever their pain and fear is. I ignite that hero within so they can go through that journey and live their highest, fullest life. So the hero's journey, let's say Joseph Campbell, is always broken down into 3 basic components. There's a separation from the pain, separation from the alcohol, separation from the fear, separation from Tatooine in Star Wars, separation from the regular life in the Matrix, separation from Krypton, separation from, you name it, it's in every hero story. Separation from Nazareth, separation from, there's always a separation because you're about to find out who you really are. Then there's an initiation process where you go through the steps. You learn the Force. You figure out, oh, wait a second, I'm not from planet Earth, I'm from Krypton, and there's all these powers that I have. There's an initiation process. Somebody downloads you in and you learn Kung Fu. You initiate all these steps and you start finding courage within yourself to go through life. But then always in every hero's journey, you have to slay that dragon, you have to face that fear, whatever that is. and there's a return home. And that's
Hmm.
why I love that part. Because so many times what I've seen with coaches and other personal development is they become the star of the movie, and then it's like this to everybody else.
Right.
It's like Eminem, No, ours, there's a return home.
Yeah. For those listening on the podcast, there were 2 middle fingers involved
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Sorry. So the return home, where you get to show who you've become, you get to pass these lessons on, and you're in your life. You still have your wife, you still have your husband, whatever it is. You still have your kids, but you're a different person from the inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Shalom, right? Peace.
Peace.
Yeah. Completeness. I love that. I know that my podcast family loves to pray, right? And you've got your book out there, Lotsaholic. You've got the Hero Project. You've got all the work that you're doing. As people are listening to this conversation, what's the one thing that they can pray for you and the work that God is doing through your platform?
Oh, for me?
Well, for the work that you're doing, the call, right? Like,
Yeah.
I just think that if you're going to give up your time and be a guest for all of us here on the podcast, we can certainly pray for you as we listen to the words that God's given you over this time, and pray for the work, the ministry, the Hero Project, the platform. Like, what would be the specific prayer that we could pray alongside you?
Thank you, Tony. It's beautiful. Thank you. I would love to have a prayer to have the power and the grace and the discernment and the positivity and the faith to be able to truly free and serve people where they're at, meet them where they're at, to achieve their highest and best, that they can accomplish wonders.
I love that.
They can accomplish wonders. So just allow me to be that vessel.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to add that to our prayer list. And I have one more question for you. But before I ask it, I know that my podcast family is going to want to connect with you all over the interwebs. Where is the best place to learn all things Adam?
Yeah, so I try to make it simple for myself. So it's at Adam Jablin anywhere: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and please reach out. We will get back to you immediately.
Yeah.
We're here to help.
Yeah, and he's really active, guys. He's really active on Instagram. It's worth going through and checking out the videos, and a lot of good content out there, and good on-ramps to get connected. Okay, last question I love to ask people. It's an advice question. I'm going to ask you to go back and give yourself one piece of advice, except I get to name the season of life that you're in.
Okay.
And so I want to take you back to 2006, the day after you graduated from rehab, or the day after you left rehab.
Okay.
If you could go back in time and sit knee to knee with that younger version of Adam, I want you to hold his hands and look him in the eye. And I want you to give him one piece of advice on what the next 17 years are going to hold for him, or how to approach it. What's the one thing that you're going to tell him?
Relax and enjoy the journey, because you truly have no idea what's in store.
That's beautiful. Adam, I'm so incredibly thankful for our time today and for your generosity of spirit. And hey, I want to make sure that we stay connected. And when that next book comes out with your mentor, I'd love to have you back on the podcast to talk about it. So thank you for being here today.
It's cool with you. I'd love to bring him too. I mean,
let's do it. That's what I mean. Yeah,
phenomenal. He's the dude. You'll trust me. You'll fall in love with him.